Hello and welcome to episode 98 of the Mark and Me podcast. As always, I'm your host Mark. Now joining me on today's episode is the director and writer Sam Kelly. This for me is one of those directors that I know is going to have a huge future ahead of him. This is why I used to love to do interviews with people like Tom Payton, and most recently lots of horror directors that I know are going to be the next big thing, and I do really truly believe that Sam Kelly is amongst these two. I think I first saw one of his short films called Lambs, which got absolutely loads of awards, got loads of attention at the New Zealand International Film Festival. He got stuff like Best Director, loads and loads of hype, and it's been amazing to see that now he's just released his brand new film, Savage, and this for a debut full feature film is amazing. I was lucky enough to be sent a screener. I sat there and I was in awe. I couldn't wait to sit down and talk to him, find out more about the filmmaking, the whole process behind the film, and the challenge of doing this whole huge scale film. The interview's great and I can't wait for you guys to hear it. But in true typical Mark and Me fashion, I do like to touch base and talk about my last episode. It was only a couple of days ago and I was joined by the singer and songwriter Aviva. A huge episode already. It may have only been out 48 hours, but the numbers have been huge. Thanks to Aviva for sharing it amongst her Instagram and Twitter, so loads of people jumped on board. I've seen loads of new listeners, so thanks, and I hope everyone that tuned in absolutely loved the episode. But as I said, today's episode is with Sam Kelly. I can't wait for you to hear it, so I think let's just do it. Here it is now, me and Sam Kelly talking all things film. Sam, thanks for joining me today on the Mark and Me podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
What I want to do is just start out by finding out, was it at a very young age that you discovered that you wanted to make films and be an actor and get involved in the film industry, or was it later on in life?
My dad always walked around with a camcorder on holidays and that sort of thing. So he was always filming things and, developed a sort of a craft of sorts, putting shots together and that sort of thing. And I think that led to me making little sort of shorts with my family, trying to rope in my brothers to play different roles and do different things. I can't explain where this sort of the storytelling instinct sort of came from, but I always just loved like writing stories and telling stories. And so I think certainly by the time I left school, I knew I wanted to be a director.
Yeah.
Not that I really knew how to. I mean, Peter Jackson was just got the green light for sort of Lord of the Rings, and so everything seemed really possible over here in our little corner of the world. And it was sort of an inspiring time.
It's crazy as well, isn't it, when you think of what he was doing before that? So stuff like The Frighteners and Bad Taste and those sort of films, and then he suddenly got Lord of the Rings. You must have been like, anyone can achieve anything right now.
Yeah. I mean, incredible. And to do it all here, his own way. That was really inspiring to me as well, that he was able to sort of control the process and not be part of their system, but to sort of, and that's what I think led it to feeling like a sort of this large independent film.
And you just mentioned then, obviously at school, you knew that that's what you wanted to do. Can you remember some of those early films that you were watching as a kid that made you fall in love with cinema, or those certain actors that you saw that thought, wow, that's what I want to do?
Yeah. So it was sort of like 80s adventure movies, I think. It's not at all the sort of films that I would my taste has changed, obviously, evolved a lot, but Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark and the Goonies, and when I was a sort of 12-year-old or something, those were the films that really sort of connected with me. There's just I don't know, there's that sort of escapism and adventure I loved.
So after school, did you go into any sort of film college or film school, or was it just a case of learning yourself, and were you self-taught, or how did it come about that you built that kind of education to become a director?
So my sort of art movie education happened at university. There wasn't a film school in New Zealand.
No.
It was, so I went to university, and it was a very academic based course. There wasn't actually any film production to it. It was really learning the history of cinema and the sort of the way that you can read cinema through different lenses, political, feminist, whatever. And then, I just got, it was really, for me, the best part was going into the library and just, discovering all of these, great films that I'd never watched before. So, and for a lot of people, this was the film degree was, or the film course was like their little fun add-on while they're doing a law degree or something serious and proper, There were a few of us who were like, actually wanted to make a career out of it. The crazy ones,
I was the same with music. I remember studying music and everyone being like, so what's your main subject? I was like, no, I'm wanting to be a musician here.
Yeah, get real.
Yeah, exactly.
They're probably right, to be fair.
yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, they're the ones laughing now.
Yeah.
And then you're saying while you're obviously learning, then studying and finding out more about film, did you then kind of get some hands-on stuff? Did you get to go on set of any films, or be some work experience, or do some assistant work to kind of get on the actual set of films, or was it not until?
So I did a postgrad course which allowed me to make some shorts, and that was really cool. It was sort of the first time that I worked with professional crew. It was sort of half made up of film students and professional crews in those sort of senior positions, heads of department. And it was a really good mix because you had the sort of the enthusiasm of youth willing to do anything for no budget, and people who actually knew what they were doing. And it was just just making awful shorts and learning craft. That was sort of the strong, that was. And in terms of other film sets, I was an actor on a sort of a TV show that was set in New Zealand, a sort of post-apocalyptic sort of soap in a way, and also, I was an extra on some of the big films like Lord of the Rings and that sort of thing. I was a elf and that.
You can't just pass that as a little thing that, and by the way, I was on Lord of the Rings. I mean,
well, I was an extra on Lord of the Rings. I was in the Council of Elrond, sitting between Legolas and Gandalf, with long blonde hair. Please don't search out the photo; you wouldn't recognize me anyway. But it was cool. No, it was just seeing these great actors work, and just really coming at it, all cylinders firing, was really great.
I mean, that must be one of the best lessons you can ever learn, being on set of probably one of the biggest scale trilogies of all time.
Yeah, well, it sort of wasn't. It wasn't. I mean, it's so far away from anything you can do or imagine. It's sort of like it's a completely whole other world. But still exciting and inspiring. And for anyone who loves film, just being on a film, when you first start out, like now, obviously on a film set, we go there and we're absolutely bored because it's most of the time there's nothing to do. But when that's all you want to do, it's incredibly exciting. For people who've never been on before, there's a real sort of romance to it, and it's sort of nice when people walk onto one of my film sets now, and they just sort of you see that in their eyes. You sort of remember how it was for you.
So you're at this stage now where obviously you've learnt your craft and you want to know that you want to be a director. You've done some acting, you've been in the biggest trilogy ever, you've done some small work as well. But what was it that then triggered you to be able to make an actual film and be a director? Was it the title Frames? Is that right?
Yeah, I did. Frames was sort of my first sort of proper film, I guess you would say. It was shot on 16mm, it was, I think that the challenge for me at that stage was finding scripts or finding what to shoot, finding my voice really. And I didn't really know what my voice was at that point, and I wasn't a good writer either. I was terrible, in fact. So I wanted to work with people who could write. And so, I put a call out with the New Zealand Writers Guild asking for writers to work with, and I got sent a bunch of scripts, and a few of them I connected with and developed, and then one of them was Frames that sort of got developed to the point where we felt ready. It was ready to go, and it was a really, again, it was a half professional crew, half sort of enthusiastic students or graduates, and we had all the toys and big cranes and all that sort of thing, which was fun to play with. And it was just learning craft, and for the next sort of few years, it was really just trying to develop shorts that and get funding
Yeah.
Was the like we in New Zealand we can actually fund short films through our film commission, but so that was the plan, but and I'd work with different writers and develop all these different ideas, and I'd write some films myself, and I ended up applying probably 17 times for short film funding and getting denied all of them.
Wow.
So over a period of about I'd say 6 to 8 years, probably eight years. I just couldn't break in and get any funding. And so, meanwhile, I had funded the last short frames by myself, which was probably, 20 grand, which is probably about 12,000 pounds or something.
Yeah.
And so I knew that I needed to improve my writing. And so I did a master's in screenwriting by the guy who runs it. It's a sort of a Yoda-like character who's incredible. He's just he's got this beautiful way of bringing out the best in you. And I developed a lot over that year. In fact, I look back at my writing at the start of the year, and even during, and I've just, so, and then basically for the next sort of, the next short film script I wrote was Lambs.
I looked actually the other day, I was doing some research. You only do films with one word titles: Frames, Lambs.
Yeah, keep it simple.
Keep it simple, yeah. So obviously the jump from doing Frames to Lambs, what was the biggest lesson you learned? Because obviously trying to make your mark and do your debut as a director, even if it's a short or whatever, that's the impact you want to have. If you look at people like Tarantino and Kevin Smith and all these big directors, to leave their mark on the film industry, everyone always judges you by your debut, which is tough because sometimes it's not your best work. But when you were on the set of Frames and you finished it, what was the biggest lesson that you taught yourself as a director? Was it that it was much bigger than you thought, or had you kind of underestimated how much work it really involved, or was it something else? What was it that kind of taught you more ready to set you up for Lambs and Savage, etc.?
I think, Frames, I think, I guess it's how hard you need to push to get anything to be interesting, to really fire. I think I learned that sort of films tend to shitness in a way. If you just let it all be and let it all out, and don't put in much effort, it just ends up being sort of shit. And you need to really work really hard at finding what is interesting about the scene at every level, from a visual, from a performance level, and just really, really do your homework and work hard on set to find it. So with Lambs, I think I also, I was probably more influenced by, I don't know, it was sort of Dardenne Brothers and films like that. And I just think I was able to bring a stronger sense of style to it through those influences. Yeah. It was a sort of a, it was more single long takes, and just trying to sit in moments and the emotional reality of them. And it sort of had that more social realist sort of feeling to it. And, I just wanted it to feel really raw and real and, and every day, so I'm guessing, your listeners won't know, Lambs is about a at-risk youth kid who, what I mean is a juvenile delinquent who lives in a abusive sort of home environment, and it's sort of a slice of life. It's one day goes, one bad day for him, and so stylistically it was sort of, I wanted, it is a really shocking world, but I wanted to present it in quite a matter of fact, everyday sense that just sort of, which it is for these kids. It was sort of their experience of it,
And your most recent film, which you're here to promote today, Savage, for anyone that's listening, without spoiling anything, how would you describe this film?
So Savage is basically it's a story about how a young kid becomes a gang member, and it's told in 3 chapters. When you know, when he's a kid and sort of gets taken from his home and placed in state care, and has to sort of survive in this pretty rough world. And then in the teenage world, when he meets these other young guys and forms this sort of young gang, but it's, you know, this sort of fun and connection and really different sort of energy to that first chapter. But it's his brother he meets again, who he was separated from, you know, in his home, and his brother's in this opposing gang, and so these two are, you know, going at each other. And but you know, our main character Danny has to choose between his friends and his brother, and he chooses his friends. And then in the third chapter, it's the adult gang world, and you know, him and his best friend that he met at the Borstal and has been in his gang the whole time is now sort of at a loggerheads with a bit of internal conflict, and Danny's a bit unsure about what he wants, whether he wants to remain in the gang or not, because the sort of the violence of it is taking a toll. He's now the sergeant of the gang and sort of the enforcer, and trying to get all these, you know, he's doing all of these acts, and his best friend is the president. And I'm probably saying way too much here.
Yeah.
maybe we should cut all of this out. Yeah, so it's sort of these three different worlds is the long and short of it.
Nice. And how did this idea come about for you? How did it all start?
It was as a result of Lambs, which was, as I said, about the at-risk youth world, that led me to meeting adult gang members and hearing, you know, so in New Zealand we have these street gangs, so they're not bikie gangs. Well, we do have bikie gangs, but what's unique about New Zealand is these gangs that a lot of them came from the state care environment in the 60s and 70s, and a lot of them came from really rough homes, and certainly state care was really rough. And so, you know, they felt alienated and then wanted to sort of join together to find this, create their own little family, their own little, you know, sense of belonging.
I suppose what opened my eyes up then is that you actually went and met some of these gang members, and that must have been something that was just, how do you mentally prepare for that? I mean, some of the stories they must share with you is just probably couldn't even digest or get your head around.
Well, it's fascinating. Who these gangs are. So there's Mongrel Mob and Black Power, and the Mongrel Mob are sort of, they base themselves on the bulldog, and known for their sort of, you know, taking on the attributes of the bulldog, which is a sort of ferocious, snarling, barking language that they, you know, they bark to each other, and you know, it's sort of the anything goes violence wise. It's extremely, you know, like especially back then, you know, it was an extremely violent world. And so I met sort of Mongrel Mob members and Black Power members and Hells Angels and sort of thing, and just got to hear how their world worked from sort of a structure, the values, the you know, everything, and then their personal stories about what led them into the gang, and those were the stories that I found really affecting, because it was, you know, that's the story that sort of Savage ultimately became. I sort of just took all these stories from different people and collated them, really.
It blows my mind thinking about some of the conversations you must have had with such sort of different people from different walks of life, and some of it must be just so emotional and just hard to just then take away and just be able to just deal with it. It must be so raw. Yeah,
it is. Like when, you know, you hear some of the stories about, particularly growing up, you know, one guy was telling me recently about how he was, you know, chained, you know, into the dog kennel, and, you know, fed skins, orange peels and apple, you know, like, and, you know, just, he was in there with broken limbs and not treated, and just the level, that level of abuse is something I think, that, you know, the trauma of it is something most people can't fathom, and the impact that has on a young mind. In fact, on an old mind, like, we understand when soldiers come back from war, how, you know, how impacted they are from the trauma, and yet when kids do it, you know, people were sort of surprised that, they feel this need to join a gang, to they feel so alienated from the adult world, who have just sort of been so abusive to them, and to form these sort of little protective units. It made total sense to me when I heard these stories.
So you've got all these stories, you've prepared all this, you've got all this like material then to try and obviously put out into a certain under 2 hour limit film. Was there so much more that you wanted to include that kind of would make a director's cut, or that you just have to leave on the cutting floor? Is there so much more that you've got to tell?
So much more, Mike.
Yeah,
It's
extended cut.
yeah, like I truly feel this like almost would have been better suited to a novel. I felt the crazy thing is just how much there is in these worlds. These worlds are incredible worlds to me, and I really wanted to explore them way more fully than you can in a 90-minute film. In fact, the first draft of the script was 2 hours, and then we had to cut 10% of that to get to production, and then we also had to cut a whole lot of the edit as well. So there's a lot that's been cut that is hard for me to sort of reconcile. But you sort of just you have to focus on what the absolute bare bones core of the story is, and then just make sure you can grab onto it and get it to the end.
Yeah. And now that the film's obviously finished and everything's done, I've seen some of the reviews on Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb, and everyone is speaking really highly. You must be absolutely thrilled with the first sort of feedback that's come out.
The reviews have been unreal, actually.
Yeah.
We've had our first two in New Zealand, and they've both been unreal. Yeah, so I'm absolutely thrilled. Absolutely. Yeah.
You can't ask for much more, can you? On all the feedback I saw yesterday was like 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10. Like people are saying masterpiece and stuff like that. And those sort of words don't get just thrown around there willy nilly.
It's you know that how much you put on the line when you make a film. How emotionally invested you are and how long it takes, and all you want is at the end of the day for people to connect with it. To feel like. Not just at both an emotional level and as a piece of work. At an emotional level, the film, the character damage sort of comes from me. He's part of me, and so is Moses in a way. Just strange to say, considering the gang members.
Yeah.
They're these sort of violent individuals, but that sense of isolation and loneliness and lost, feeling that I had. Was absolutely where I was when I was writing the script. So, and Damage and Moses are sort of two sides of the same coin. That they both have this void inside of them from what happened in state care, and they're trying to fill it in different ways. Damage with connection and belonging, and Moses with this sense that he matters. Because he's been told his whole life that he doesn't matter. So. Yeah, and that's something I've sort of, I guess I feel in some way, shape or form, even though transposing that into a, really masculine, violent world is interesting.
And now that obviously under your belt, you've had Frames, Lambs, Savages, each time the budget's getting bigger, the scale's getting bigger. What's next? Have you just got this absolute love and desire to carry on more stories and carry on directing and doing more writing now that you've done your masters and stuff? Or how is it that you're kind of processing
Absolutely
the years?
So I think I want my next project to be smaller, actually. I just because the most valuable thing on a set is time.
Yeah.
And that's all I want is and Savage was a really ambitious film. And that means there's a lot of sort of production to it. And I think the thing that I'm really attracted to is trying to find this sort of sense of a sharp edge to a scene, this sort of feeling of rawness and that feeling of it being really alive and raw. Yeah. And so I just, that comes from performances and two actors who are alive to each other, and it comes from casting, and it comes from what you can find in the moment. And I just, I've got a few ideas for scripts for what's next, and they're sort of competing at the moment, and just in my mind, and I'm feeling them out. I'm in that space where I'm feeling really ready to start writing again. And as I said, I know that I'm a much better writer. Obviously that's the lovely thing about writing is you will write your whole life and always be learning. Always never feel like a master, which is what I actually love. Growth is really important to me, and so I'm attracted to that idea.
A lot of filmmakers and people starting out in their career listen to this podcast. So I've had quite a few directors that are starting to make a name for themselves. Some question that I ask absolutely everyone that comes on the show, it doesn't matter if they're a world famous actor or a musician, but what advice do you give to anyone that's trying to make a name for themselves, like yourself, in the film industry and become a director like yourself, or want to try and be above the rest to try and get noticed, when anybody now has a 4K camera on an iPhone, anyone has the ability to upload to Instagram and YouTube, but how do you feel that it's the best way to go about there now to get your work noticed?
I think, look, it's a really competitive market. It's an awful word, marketplace. But even at a film festival level, it's there's tens of thousands of films that are all competing to play, and I think the films that make it are the films that have ambition to them, and they're bold in some way, and they often feel very personal, or have some sort of unique take. So I think my advice would just be to swing for the fence, really, no matter what you're doing. Don't try and make something safe or that you think will get made, or I don't know, just swing for the fence, be bold.
I just wanted to say thank you, Sam, for coming on the podcast.
Lovely connecting with you, Mark. Yeah, thanks for having me.
So there it is. There's my interview with me and Sam Kelly. What a great guy. Quite a short interview, and one of those ones where I wish I had a bit longer, but I'm sure we'll get him back on the show in a few years' time and talk about where his career's gone. And I really do truly believe it'll go huge. He's got such a great eye, his detail is incredible, and when I watched the film I was blown away. Luckily the film is right now still in cinemas, so if you're listening to this you can go out and see it. And there's not much on at the cinema at the moment, but go and check out Savage. It's absolutely awesome and you won't regret it. If this is the first time you're tuning in to Mark and me, thanks for taking the time to listen. I hope you come back for more. And if not, there's 97 episodes waiting for you right now on iTunes or Spotify or Podomatic. It's really busy and you're getting interviews every few days at the moment because I'm getting more and more interviews and it's just absolutely crazy. So I hope you're enjoying it. And if you're a long time listener, wow, this is the time where you're getting more episodes than absolutely ever before. So this is the time. If you are loving Mark and Me, I suggest you jump onto markandme.com. On there, there's my Facebook, my Instagram, my Twitter page, and you can drop me an email. I read every single message you send and I respond personally to you all. And if you really love the podcast, please support me on my Patreon page. On markandme.com there's a link. You can sign up there. You're getting about 5 or 6 episodes a month, and all I ask is about £1 a month. That makes a huge difference, allows me to go out there and do more and more interviews, which means basically more and more podcast interviews for you guys out there. It's a win-win. And you know what? Talking about winning, I also give some amazing prizes away to you guys every single month. And over the next few weeks ahead, I've got some incredible guests coming on and some even better prizes, and I can't wait to share them with you. So get on Mark and Me, follow me on all my socials, and I promise you there's going to be some incredible stuff coming up. Thanks again everyone for tuning in. It's absolutely manic at the moment. You're going to get an episode again in less than a week, and we're getting so close now to the big episode 100. Thanks for supporting Mark and Me. Take care, and I'll speak to you all in a few days' time.